Move Tsunade! Jiraiya thought as he watched Orochimaru's blade descend upon the immobilized Tsunade. The sage gritted his teeth when he saw that Tsunade was still frozen in fear and knew that she would be dead unless she did something. Wind style, wind wave. Orochimaru turned his face to see a kunai speeding towards his face. The snake summoner quickly moved his head up to dodge the kunai, giving Jiraiya the perfect opportunity to take Tsunade away. The sage quickly leapt towards Tsunade before taking her hand and leading her away from the snake summoner. He would need to assure the safety of her and Shizen before going back to help Naruto. You won't get away! Orochimaru yelled as a snake came out of his mouth again and sped off towards Jiraiya, but before it could get far the snake was cut in half by Naruto's blade. You! Orochimaru spat in anger. The same brat that had ruined his plans in Konoha was about to sabotage his plans of killing Tsunade. Wind style, devastation. Naruto yelled as a violent wind came out of his mouth, hitting Orochimaru full force. The snake summoner proved to be a legendary ninja and broke through the attack with little trouble. The blonde gritted his teeth and got into his favorite hand sign, multi-shadow clone jutsu. Orochimaru frowned as thousands of Naruto copies filled the room. The damned brat was way too annoying. The snake summoner returned the snake into his mouth and took the sword on hand. He had had enough. Naruto didn't know what else to do. He was up against a legendary ninja and was running out of options in just a few seconds. His plan was to stall Orochimaru with his clones and look for an opening, though he knew that he had no chance of beating the legendary ninja. What he had to do was wait until Jiraiya got back, if not then he was dead, simple as that. Die, Orochimaru said with a snarl as he swung the blade. Naruto was taken aback by the attack, but his eyes widened when he noticed that the sword was expanding until it was about 30 feet long. With one simple swing all of the clones were dispelled, leaving the real Naruto exposed to the snake summoner. Got you! Orochimaru appeared before Naruto in a show of pure speed, and before the blonde could react he received a punch on his stomach, knocking the air out of him. The Chunin gasped in pain before being kicked on the face. The blonde felt part of his jaw shatter from the power behind the kick before sailing through the air and crashing against one of the walls painfully. The blonde fell limply on the ground with most of his strength gone. Pain was all Naruto knew at the moment. His whole jaw ached horribly and blood flowed freely from his mouth. He still hadn't caught his breath from the punch on his stomach, and he had hit the back of his head against the wall, giving him a painful headache. It was no wonder that Orochimaru was considered legendary. In less than a minute he had left him in such a state. Orochimaru chuckled in amusement. Here I thought you would put up a little fight. He walked towards Naruto's fallen form and raised his sword. I didn't want to kill you at first since I found you amusing, but you have run my patience. The sword descended upon Naruto. The blonde couldn't do anything except close his eyes. He had no more strength to fight back and would need to do something he hated. His only choice would be to use it, and in order to do it, he would need concentration. He concentrated until demonic chakra pumped through his system and his eyes snapped open. Jiraiya and Tsunade ran through the halls of Orochimaru's base with an unconscious Shizen hanging from Jiraiya's shoulder. The sage had to find an exit quick before going back to help Naruto. He wouldn't last long against Orochimaru. He was ashamed of himself for leaving him on his own, but knew that the blonde wanted to buy him some time. He was brought out of his musings when he saw sunlight at the end of the hall. Okay Tsunade, Jiraiya said in a quick voice. He took Shizen off of his shoulder and set her gently on the ground. I'm going back to help Naruto, you stay here. Before Tsunade could answer, Jiraiya was already off. The sage knew he had little time to help his student and ran through hand signs. Looks like I have to use it, he thought with a frown. He slammed his hands on the ground and two small elderly toads appeared. What's the matter, Jiraiya boy? Asked one of the toads. There's no time. I have to use it right now, Jiraiya said in a worried voice. The toad heard the worry and nodded at its companion. The two toads jumped onto Jiraiya's shoulders and connected to him. Jiraiya's appearance began to change. His nose got bigger, warts appeared on his face and his eyes became toad-like. Hang on Naruto. the sage thought as he ran through the hallways in an incredible speed that made it seem as if he was a blur. Orochimaru's sword struck the floor and his eyes widened. There was no sign of Naruto. Hearing footsteps, he turned to his right to see Naruto charging at him. He slammed his hands on the ground and hundreds of snakes appeared. They all launched at the blonde with their fangs bared, prepared to kill. The blonde saw the snakes coming and put a hand around his mouth before making a strong wind come out of his mouth and stop the snakes on their tracks. The snakes were blown away before hitting the opposite wall and disappearing in puffs of smoke. "This brat," Orochimaru said with a chuckle, "is an interesting one." Naruto glared at Orochimaru through blue slit eyes. Blue chakra with marks of red swirled around the blonde. His whisker marks were darkened and his hair had grown spikier. "Wind style," the blonde muttered with a frown. Orochimaru watched in interest as the blonde took a deep breath. "Air bullets," Naruto finished in his head as he unleashed the air on his lungs and fired balls of winds at Orochimaru. The legendary ninja dodged the first bullet with ease but frowned when he saw it make a hole through a wall. Just how much power was behind that attack? He had no time to think as a barrage of wind bullets sped towards him. He easily dodged the attacks due to his speed but frowned when he noticed that the attacks were getting stronger little by little. He gazed at Naruto but raised a brow when he saw that he wasn't there anymore. "I got you!" Naruto yelled from behind Orochimaru. The legendary ninja turned around to see Naruto charging at him with his blade on hand. His eyes widened when he saw that the blade was infused with the blue chakra and that it extended at least 8 feet. Orochimaru used his own blade to parry the attack. Naruto didn't let up though and continued to swing wildly at the legendary ninja. The snake summoner smirked as he blocked the attacks. The blonde was truly interesting and would become a problem if not dealt with right now. As of now, he was only testing Naruto to see how much strength was behind his unusual transformation. From the looks of it, all of the blonde's abilities increased, but he knew that it took a toll on his body since he hadn't made a single clone since they would probably dispel the moment they were surrounded by the chakra. "Damn it," Naruto thought with a frown as a trickle of sweat ran down his face, "I'm already pushing it as it is. If this keeps up, I'll end up with no more chakra." The blonde jumped away from Orochimaru and ran through hand signs. "Wind style, devastation." Orochimaru watched as a powerful wind came out of Naruto's mouth and noticed that he had infused it with that same chakra. "That's enough for now," Orochimaru said with a smirk as he made a mud wall to block the attack. The wind crashed against the mud wall but didn't cause as much as a scratch. "Damn," Naruto muttered once his attack died down. He was panting now and his enhanced chakra was starting to disappear. He watched as the mud wall went down to reveal a smirking Orochimaru. The blonde hadn't been able to land a single blow on the legendary ninja and couldn't help but feel fear towards the snake summoner. "Looks like you're out of that chakra," Orochimaru said with a smirk. "What do I do now?" Naruto asked himself as Orochimaru approached him with a twisted smile on his face. The blonde's body was numb and refused to move. "Damn it. Move, you idiot." The snake summoner pointed his sword at the blonde as he walked. Orochimaru chuckled. "Look at you, all afraid." He licked his lips and smirked. "My blade will end your fear, brat." Naruto gritted his teeth. There was nothing more to do. He had already played his trump card and was almost out of chakra, with his body no longer moving from the strain it had taken. He watched as Orochimaru approached, but his eyes widened when he saw the ground beneath the snake summoner began to swirl. "What?" Orochimaru asked himself as he was being swallowed by the ground. "Fire style, toad flame bomb." Jiraiya yelled as he unleashed a steam of fire while the toads on his shoulders unleashed toad oil at Orochimaru. The two attacks mixed and he resulted in a large explosion where Orochimaru had been, leaving a large cloud of smoke filling the area. "Let's go, kid," Jiraiya exclaimed as he slung Naruto over his shoulders and began to run out of the base. What? Where are we going?" Naruto asked as the sage sped through the halls. Jiraiya looked over his shoulder. "I'm going to get you to Tsunade." You're going to get her to a safe place and wait for me outside. I'm going to go back inside and blow the place up so we have one less base to worry about, he instructed. Naruto stared at Jiraiya with a blank expression, making Jiraiya feel a little awkward. What are you staring at? What the hell happened to you and why is there a toad on your shoulder? Naruto deadpanned. Nice to meet ya, said the toad with a smile on his face. My name is Fukasaku. And I'm Shima, said the other toad. Weird. Naruto muttered with an odd look on his face. Jiraiya sighed at his student's lack of respect. This is as far as we go, he said as he put Naruto down and pointed to the exit. Tsunade should be out there. Make sure to protect her at all costs, she's still a little shaky from the blood. Naruto nodded. Got it, sensei, he said before looking down with a frown. I'm sorry, but I had to use it again. You did what you had to do, Jiraiya said with a serious expression. You were lucky not to have overdone it, otherwise you'd be dead right now. Just make sure not to use it again until you have the necessary training. I understand, Naruto said as he watched Jiraiya run back into the base. Be careful, sensei. With that, the blonde ran out of the base, keen on following his master's orders. Orochimaru growled as he got out of the rubble Jiraiya's attack had caused. He had been a fool to turn a blind eye to Jiraiya, but he supposed he hadn't been able to detect him because the sage was using the infamous sage mode. He had never seen it himself until now and had to say that it was a powerful technique. Lord Orochimaru, Kabuto said as he walked to Orochimaru with a slight limp to his step. Kimimaro stood next to him with a calm expression on his face. What happened, Kabuto? Orochimaru asked with a frown. Kabuto sighed. I was ambushed by Naruto, he began. I underestimated him and ended up getting hit by a Rasengan. Orochimaru nodded with a snarl. What about Kimimaro? He asked. Is he fit for battle? Kabuto nodded. I believe so. He turned to the sound ninja and smirked. Once I recovered from the attack, I used my medical jutsu to awaken Kimimaro and heal his fatigue. Very well, Orochimaru said. Kimimaro, I want you to find and kill the fox brat. His might become a threat with time. As of now, he should be out of the base. Kabuto, you and I will prepare to leave this base since it's been compromised. We will meet in the south base in one day. The two sound ninja nodded. Kimimaro took off towards the nearest exit while Kabuto and Orochimaru left in clouds of smoke. As soon as Naruto got out of the base, he was greeted by the sight of a blood-covered Tsunade sitting next to an unconscious Shizune. The blonde frowned. She hadn't done anything to help and only cared about how sorry she felt about herself. Jiraiya had told him all about Tsunade's tragic life and he couldn't believe how selfish Tsunade was. Instead of honoring the memory of her brother and of her lover, she chose to run away from everything. Is she all right? Naruto asked. Tsunade didn't respond and kept her gaze on the ground. What's the matter with you? The blonde gritted his teeth and glared at Tsunade. You're a medic, aren't you supposed to help her? Stop being selfish and help her already. Shut up, brat. Tsunade snapped in anger. You don't know anything. Naruto gritted his teeth and clenched his fist. I know all abo dash. The blonde's eyes widened and he jumped to the side, dodging a barrage of bow-like blades. You are indeed skilled if you managed to dodge my attack, came a voice from a tree. Naruto turned his gaze towards the voice and his eyes widened when he noticed that it was the same ninja he had spared. But I will still kill you in name of Lord Orochimaru. Naruto gave a quick gaze at Tsunade before getting into his taijutsu stance. I don't plan on dying today, he said with a smirk on his face. Tsunade gazed at Naruto and her eyes widened when she saw the determination on his eyes. I still have to be Hokage someday. He. Tsunade watched Naruto and couldn't help but think of her dead brother. Tears welled up on her eyes remembering the days she had been with her brother. She would annoy, embarrass, and argue with her brother, but she always loved him. The same determination and dream that lived on her brother was now living on Naruto. You're a fool, Kimimaro said with a calm expression. No matter what you do, I'll end your life here and now. We'll see about that, Naruto said with a smirk as he charged at Kimimaro with his blade in hand. Kimimaro opened his palm and a blade made of bone emerged from his palm. He charged at Naruto and the two blades met with a clang. The blades were intertwined and Naruto smirked as he began to infuse chakra to his blade. A blade infused with wind chakra was able to cut through almost anything. The wind-enhanced blade easily cut through Kimimaro's, but as soon as it did, bones emerged from the Sound Ninja's stomach and stabbed Naruto's right arm. Naruto cried in pain and tore his arm away from the bones. Blood flowed freely from his right arm and it already felt numb. He tried to move his arm but found that he couldn't. The bones had probably cut through his nerves. Kimimaro wasted no time and punched the blonde in the stomach before kicking him away, making the blonde land on the ground with a thud. Now do you see the difference on outstrength? Kimimaro said in an emotionless voice. Damn, I used all of my chakra already, Naruto thought with a frown. I have to rely on my taijutsu. The blonde stood up shakily and smirked at Kimimaro before charging towards him. The Sound Ninja scoffed and took out another blade from his right palm. He swung the blade, but Naruto spun to his right at the last moment and only got a slight cut on his right rib. The blonde was now inside of Kimimaro's defenses and used his left hand to punch him on the chest. Before the fist could make contact, bones stuck out of Kimimaro's chest and impaled the blonde's fist. Tsunade cringed at Naruto's scream of agony. The blonde pulled his hand away from the bones, but as soon as he did, he received a punch to the jaw. Tsunade could only watch as Naruto was being knocked around by Kimimaro like a ragdoll. The Chunin couldn't do much except close his eyes at each strike he received. No, Tsunade thought as she watched Naruto run at Kimimaro before being kicked away. The blonde stood up and charged at the Sound Ninja again. This time Kimimaro allowed him to get close before stabbing Naruto through the stomach with his blade. No! The legendary medic watched as Naruto spat blood and life started to leave his eyes. She had to help. She wouldn't allow Naruto to die, he would accomplish his dreams and she would make sure of it. Let him go! Tsunade yelled as she appeared next to Kimimaro and delivered a punch to his stomach. The Sound Ninja managed to reinforce his body with bones but was still knocked aside like a ragdoll before losing consciousness. Tsunade wasted no time and began to look through Naruto's wounds. The blonde had internal bleeding and some of his digestive organs had been impaled by Kimimaro's blade. She began to use her medical jutsu to heal Naruto and grew worried when she saw how hard he was panting. If she didn't stabilize him quickly, he would go into cardiac arrest from the loss of blood. The legendary medic's hands were covered in blood, but she didn't care. All that mattered was healing Naruto and making sure that he would be able to realize the dream where many others had failed. As she began to heal his organs, she was surprised to see that they were already healing in a fast rate. No doubt the fox was healing Naruto in order to remain alive. She was soon finished closing his wounds, but the loss of blood couldn't be recovered with medical jutsu. She would need to find a hospital. Tsunade. Naruto muttered weakly. Tsunade grew worried. Don't talk or you'll make it worse, she instructed as she began to work on healing his broken jaw. I'm going to get you patched up, but you need to take it easy. All right. Naruto said with a slight chuckle, looks like you're not afraid of blood anymore. Tsunade gave a small smile and nodded. You have to rest for now. It will help you recover faster. Naruto's eyelids became heavier and he nodded weakly before losing consciousness. Sunlight entered through the window of a hospital room, making Naruto stir from his peaceful sleep. The blonde's eyes opened slowly and he grew confused. He didn't know why he was in a hospital or where exactly he was. This was not a Konoha hospital since it lacked the all-white rooms. This hospital room was a light blue and had a window overlooking a village that he was unfamiliar with. Where am I? Naruto asked himself in slight worry. What happened to Jiraiya-sensei or Tsunade? Naruto heard the room's door began to open and turned towards it, hoping to find some answers. The blonde got a confused look on his face when he saw Shizune enter the room with a smile. I see you're awake, she said with a smile. How are you feeling? The blonde tried to respond, but his throat was hoarse and he broke into a fit of coughs. Shizen was quickly at his side and gave him a glass of water that he gladly took. "Where am I?" the blonde asked weakly once he was done with the water. "You're in one of Konoha's neighboring villages," Shizen explained. "You were brought here after being badly hurt by a sound ninja." Naruto nodded in understanding. "Where's Jiraiya-sensei and Tsunade?" he asked with a worried look. "Are they all right?" "They're quite well," Shizen said with a smile. "Lord Jiraiya managed to blow up Orochimaru's base, while Lady Tsunade brought you here and healed you." "That's good," Naruto said with a smile as he brought a hand to his chest. He gave an odd look when he felt something around his chest and found it to be the necklace Tsunade had been wearing. The door opened once again, revealing Tsunade. The legendary medic's eyes widened when she saw Naruto awake and smiled. "You're finally awake," she said with a hint of relief on her voice. "You really had us worried." "How long have I been out?" Naruto asked. "You've been unconscious for 4 days," Tsunade said with a sigh. "Seriously, kid, why did you sleep so long?" Naruto chuckled sheepishly. "Sorry about that, but those sound ninja were tough," he responded before he lifted his new necklace and showed it to Tsunade. "Why am I wearing your necklace, Granny Tsunade?" Tsunade got a tick mark on her head but ignored the granny comment. "That necklace used to belong to my grandfather, the first Hokage," she began. Naruto got a look of disbelief and looked at the necklace in awe. "By giving you that necklace it means that I'm giving you my support." "Support for what?" Naruto asked in confusion. "My support on your dream of becoming Hokage," she explained as she approached Naruto. Tsunade leaned to Naruto's forehead and gave it a small kiss, making the blonde blush in embarrassment. "What are you doing?" Naruto exclaimed in embarrassment. "You can't be doing that out of nowhere." Tsunade smiled. It had been the same reaction Nawaki had whenever she kissed his forehead. "Relax, brat," she said with a smirk. "That was to show that I have complete confidence on you." Naruto grinned. "I promise I won't let you down, but being Hokage isn't my only dream," he admitted with a smile. "I also plan on becoming strong enough to take care of all my precious people." "To do that you'll need more training," Jiraiya said. He had just arrived and was sitting on the window with his arms crossed. "Can't you ever use a door, Jiraiya-sensei?" Naruto asked with a frown. "Now, where would be the fun in that?" Jiraiya said with a chuckle. 2 days later the group was making their way to Konoha. The reason they hadn't left a day after Naruto woke up was because Tsunade said he needed more rest and she would castrate anyone who didn't listen to her. During this time Tsunade had grown very protective of Naruto to a point where Jiraiya called her Naruto's unofficial mom. She had punched Jiraiya through a wall for saying that, though she never denied it. Naruto had gotten to know Shizune and grew to view her as a type of older sister. She was nice to him and even let him play with Taunton, whom Tsunade had left with one of her contacts for safekeeping. The group had grown close and Naruto couldn't be happier. He finally had an idea of what having a family was like. They were currently only a few miles away from Konoha. Naruto was excited to get there because that would mean he could train again, since Tsunade had forbidden him from doing it since she was still worried over his injuries. It was true since Naruto still had bandages on his head and most of his upper body. "I can't wait to get back," Naruto declared with a smile. "I haven't had ramen in so long that I'm forgetting what it tastes like." "It's only been a few days," Jiraiya muttered with a sigh. Naruto frowned. "What are you talking about?" he asked. "We've been gone for about 19 days. Jiraiya's face faltered. "You were actually counting?" he asked in disbelief. "Of course," Naruto admitted with a smile. "I've been counting the days where I didn't have ramen and they were like hell since I could only eat hospital food and you're cooking all this time." Jiraiya smirked. "Are you sure it's been hell because of that?" he asked as he gave a knowing look to Naruto. "Are you sure you didn't just miss your girlfriend?" Naruto blushed. "Ino's not my girlfriend," he declared with a bright blush. "When did I say the name Ino?" Jiraiya asked with a smirk. Naruto growled with a blush on his face as Jiraiya broke into a fit of laughter. You'll pay for that, Jiraiya-sensei, the blonde muttered before walking towards Tsunade and whispered something to her. What? Tsunade screamed in anger. Jiraiya gulped in fear when Tsunade approached him with a death glare. Did I just hear that you made Naruto read your smut? Jiraiya's eyes almost fell out of their sockets and he began to shake in fear. I didn't, he gasped out in fear before receiving a punch that sent him crashing into a tree. If I ever find you trying to corrupt Naruto again, I'll beat you to death, she declared before continuing to walk with an embarrassed Shizen trailing alone. Naruto stood back and threw Jiraiya a smirk, showing that he had gotten his revenge. That was truly evil, kid, Jiraiya muttered with a whimper. Murmurs were heard all throughout Konoha. Many villagers glanced at the group of ninja walking through the village. There were mixed emotions and different rumors going around. Some people were glad to see that Naruto was okay and wondered if it had been Jiraiya and Tsunade who had protected the blonde from Itachi. Other villagers couldn't care less about Naruto and wondered why Tsunade had come back to the village. They were happy, regardless, since it meant that their village would be a lot more safe with the presence of a legendary ninja. I thought we were going to the hospital, Naruto said with a small frown on his face. They had only arrived to the village a few minutes ago and he planned on going to the hospital before anything else. Some of his friends were still hurt from the Chunin exams. We will, Tsunade responded with a nod, but we have to report to the Hokage first since I can't just walk into a hospital and start treating its patients as if I own the place. Naruto crossed his arms and huffed. I guess you're right, he responded with a smile making its way to his face. Besides, I have to tell the old man how good I did on my first mission as a Chunin. You did have my help, Jiraiya said with a smirk on his face. I doubt that you would have been successful if it hadn't been for me. Naruto simply crossed his arms and looked away, knowing his master was right. He looked around the street and found that they were subjects to many stares of curiosity. It was a little weird that he wasn't getting any hateful looks, but he assumed it was because of who was with him. He looked at his companions and grinned slightly. They were legendary ninja that everyone loved and respected, and he knew that they didn't get strong for any selfish needs. It had been a dream of his to be acknowledged, but it wasn't until a few days ago that he fully comprehended that it was a rather selfish dream. That dream had changed into something more meaningful that wouldn't change with any amount of time. We're here, Tsunade said with a small smile, finding it a little nostalgic to be standing before the Hokage's office. It looked exactly the same since she had left the village. Let's go, Jiraiya said as the four ninja entered the building. The receptionist gave them a quick glance before her eyes widened and gave a quick bow. Who's she bowing to, Jiraiya-sensei? Naruto asked his master. Jiraiya sighed and shook his head. His student was really clueless at times. Don't worry about it for now, Naruto. Let's go see the Hokage. The sage gave a nod to the receptionist before ascending the stairs of the building. After a few minutes the group was standing before the door that led to the Hokage's office. Shizen walked ahead of the group since she knew that none of them would show any level of politeness, and knocked on the door. Enter, came the third's voice from his office. Shizen sighed in relief, and looked at her companions. They were unusually quiet, but she was happy that they were behaving. Sometimes she felt as if she was the only responsible one on the group. She opened the door to the room and entered with a polite smile on her face. Hey old man. Naruto and Jiraiya said right after entering the room. Shizen sighed, knowing that nothing would ever change those two. Sarutobi smiled. I take it your mission was a success? Receiving a grin from Naruto, the third nodded and gave Tsunade a smile. It's good to see you again, Tsunade. I never thought I would say this, but it's good to be back, she responded with a smile. The third nodded with a smile on his face, before taking out a couple of scrolls. I've already prepared the documents that will let you become the head of the medical team, he explained with his pipe on his mouth. It will only take a few days, but you're welcome to work in the hospital whenever you want. I'll keep that in mind, Tsunade said with a smile. Now I need to speak to Jiraiya alone, I hope you don't mind, Sarutobi stated in a polite tone. Naruto grinned at the Hokage. Don't worry about it, old man, he he responded with a smile on his face, Granny Tsunade and I have to go to the hospital anyway. Tsunade growled at the nickname but didn't voice her opinion on the matter. We'll be leaving now, she stated before giving a last look to Sarutobi. It was good to see you again, sensei. The third nodded with a smile as he watched the three ninja leave his office. He turned to Jiraiya, who had a look of seriousness on his face. I take it you have a lead on them? Sarutobi asked. Jiraiya nodded. I'll probably be gone a little longer than I first thought, the sage explained as he crossed his arms. I think that I'll be gone about 2 months at most, but as soon as I get back I'm taking Naruto with me. Very well, the third said with a nod. He let out a little smoke from his pipe and gave Jiraiya a serious look. What happened to Naruto during the mission? He seems a little different than usual. He had to kill on this mission, Jiraiya responded. He's dealing with it the same way Minato did, but I'm sure he'll come around soon. Naruto walked through the hospital with a frown. Tsunade had gone to meet some of the supervisors of the hospital with Shizune in tow. He had been okay with that since Tsunade had to take care of priorities first. After that he decided to visit Sasuke, but on the way there he ran into Asuma. The Jonin didn't have much time to talk since he apparently had a mission but managed to tell Naruto that Kakashi was in the hospital. The blonde had done a little digging around and found out that Kakashi had been left in that state by none other than Itachi. Naruto arrived in front of Sasuke's room and gritted his teeth. Itachi hadn't only hurt Kakashi but Sasuke too, and to add salt to the wound, it had happened right in front of him. The blonde still needed more training. He wouldn't be able to protect his friends against people like Itachi if he was in his current level, and he had to fix that. The blonde opened the door to find the room filled with most of the rookie nine. Sasuke was unconscious in a bed, Sakura sat next to him with worry on her eyes, Choji ate chips near the door, Kiba leaned against a wall with an impassive look on his face, Shino stood in a corner with his gaze going around the room, and finally Ino sat near Sakura. Hey, Naruto muttered in surprise at seeing so many people on the room. Ino quickly turned around, hearing the familiar voice, and smiled. Naruto, she exclaimed as she went over to him and pulled him into a hug, you've been gone too long. There was a collective quiet from the group in the room, making Ino break the hug and glare at them. What's your problem? Ino asked with a frown. We're in a hospital, Shino responded, therefore we need to be quiet as a courtesy to the patients. Ino had the decency to blush. I already knew that, she said in a much quiet voice, I just didn't expect Naruto to arrive so suddenly. Kiba smirked. Leave her alone, Shino. She was just glad to see her boyfriend again, he teased with Akamaru barking in agreement. Ino blushed a crimson red and glared at Kiba. What did you say, mutt? She growled through gritted teeth. The two broke into an argument that soon involved most of the people in the room, even the quiet Shino had been dragged into the heated argument. Naruto watched the exchange with a small grin on his face. His friends were really one of a kind. The blonde shook his head and sat in an empty chair near Ino, trying to stay out of the argument. Any other day he would have loved to annoy Kiba, but he felt a little tired today. It had been a really long mission after all. Quiet, commanded a voice from the door. The group turned around to see Tsunade standing before them with a disapproving gaze. There's no excuse for being so loud in a hospital. Naruto grinned at Tsunade. Are you done healing Kakashi-sensei? He asked, receiving a nod from Tsunade. Wow. That was fast, Granny Tsunade. Tsunade twitched at the nickname but dismissed it for now. She had someone to heal at the moment. Give me some room, she said as she walked towards Sasuke's sleeping form. Ino and Naruto moved out of the way while Sakura stayed glued to her spot. I said move. Sakura quickly moved away after hearing the commanding voice of Tsunade. The legendary medic quickly got to work and looked over Sasuke and found that he didn't need much. His body showed no sign of damage and the only problem was his mind being in shock. She simply used her medical jutsu around Sasuke's body before applying pressure on his head. There, Tsunade said as she moved away from the Uchiha, that should do it. He'll wake up soon. As soon as she said those words, Sasuke began to stir before opening his eyes. Tears of joy fell from Sakura's eyes as she went over to the Uchiha and cried on his arm. Naruto could see the discomfort on Sasuke's eyes but didn't mention it since it would probably hurt Sakura. Everyone went around Sasuke's bed asking him questions about how he had gotten hurt and how he felt, though Shino just stood near the bed without saying a word. Tsunade walked to Naruto and gave him a small smile. "He'll be fine now," she explained with her arms crossed, looking at the happy group of genin around Sasuke. "Shouldn't you be with them?" Naruto shook his head. "I have some stuff to do," he answered. "Thank you for healing him." "It's what I do," Tsunade responded. "What do you plan on doing now, Kakashi?" Guy asked. He had arrived before Tsunade and had witnessed how the legendary medic healed his rival. Kakashi had been quiet ever since he woke up, and that only meant that he was in deep thought. "Nothing as of now," Kakashi responded in a serious tone. "If the Akatsuki have members like Itachi, then I'll have to get stronger." Guy nodded at his rival. "Training to protect your students is always youthful." He raised a thumb at Kakashi with a smile on his face. "Right now Jiraiya is doing all he can to gather information, but we already know how terrible they can be," Kakashi explained. "What do you mean?" Guy asked with confusion written on his face. "Think about it," Kakashi began. "If Itachi is part of the Akatsuki, then that means that whoever the leader is, he or she has to be in a whole other level than him. Worst case scenario, they're even stronger than the 3 Sannin. Then I will train even harder than before. I will also protect everyone from the Akatsuki, and if I can't, I'll do 1,000 push-ups with a boulder on my back using only one hand." Guy declared with a smile on his face, before pointing at Kakashi, "I will challenge you even more than before and will become a lot stronger in no time." Kakashi's sweat dropped. Just what did I get myself thrown into? Naruto sat on top of the Hokage monument with a frown on his face. The blonde was a little upset at being ignored by everyone in the hospital room, but he dismissed it for now. They had been happy to have Sasuke back, and it was obvious that they would want to talk to him. He didn't really blame his friends for it. The blonde was in fact a little surprised with himself at the moment. Back in the hospital, after witnessing Sakura cry for Sasuke, he half expected himself to be saddened about it, but now that he thought about it, he didn't really feel anything after witnessing it. He assumed that his crush for the pink-haired Kunoichi was gone. Naruto sighed as he gazed at the village. He felt tired from his long mission, not physically tired, but mentally. The things he had done weighed heavily on him. Since he still somewhat regretted killing those sound ninja, he felt as if it hadn't been completely necessary to kill them. "There you are," came a sweet voice behind him. Naruto turned around and his eyes widened when he saw Ino walking over to him with a smile on her face. "What are you doing here all alone?" Ino asked as she took a seat next to the blonde. Naruto turned his gaze to the village and sighed. "I guess I just didn't feel like being around so many people," he admitted with a little regret on his voice. "I'd rather take it easy for now." Ino looked at Naruto in sadness. His eyes had changed. The sparkle of innocence and mischief was gone, replaced with regret and pain. "What happened on your mission?" she asked in concern. "I don't want to talk about it," Naruto muttered with his gaze never leaving the village. "Naruto." Ino sighed out in sadness. Naruto gave Ino a quick glance before turning back to the village. "Why don't you go visit Sasuke?" he asked a little harsher than he intended. The blonde ran a hand through his hair and gave Ino a small smile. "I'll be all right on my own." Ino shook her head. "You're more important than him," she whispered loud enough for Naruto to hear. The blonde's eyes widened and he looked at Ino in surprise. "Something happened on your mission, something that is hurting you." "Didn't I tell you that I would help you with your pain?" "That was a promise I made myself that day. I promised that no matter what happened, I would always be there for you." Naruto smiled at Ino with some tears forming on his eyes. The feeling of regret was coming back to him. He rested his back on the ground, watching the clouds floating up above. "Something did happen," the blonde admitted. "I had to do something I always hoped to avoid." Ino took hold of Naruto's hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. "What happened?" she asked in concern, hoping to know what was hurting her friend. You'll feel better if you tell me. I had to kill, Naruto said in a cold voice. Ino looked at Naruto in shock. She had never seen the blonde as someone who would take a life, but they were ninja. Ninja were supposed to kill. For all she knew, every one of her friends had probably killed before. We're ninja, Naruto. It's what we do, she responded with sadness on her voice. Naruto nodded. I know that, he said with a frown. I kept telling myself that. Even before it happened, I knew that I would end up killing someone at some point, but it wasn't until I killed that something inside of me snapped. I had killed a sound ninja, and it had been incredibly easy. He had no time to even see me before I took his life. Ino only listened. Naruto was emptying his heart from the guilt he felt, and she could only be there for him at the moment. She would let him spill every single emotion he had oppressed from the mission and would help him get through this. I felt like a murderer, Naruto said through gritted teeth. There was a time when I was actually looking forward to it. I felt strong, like nothing could hurt me, but when I caught wind of what I was thinking, I felt like a murderer, no better than the people I was killing. But that isn't really you, Ino argued with tears welling up in her eyes. You just said that you regretted ever thinking that. That means that you're still you. Asuma-sensei once told us that it was hard to take a life, but that it was even harder to go back to being your normal self. Naruto thought over Ino's word carefully. She was right, he wasn't a mindless murderer since he felt bad about having done it. He knew that he would always hate killing, but knew that it was in order to maintain peace. The only thing he hoped for was to have Ino there to help him get through it. You're right, Naruto responded with a smile. I know I'm still not back to normal, but I promise that I'll try. Ino smiled back before standing up and offering her hand to Naruto. Come on, let's go out, she ordered with a smile, and you better drop that gloomy attitude of yours or I won't take you with me. Naruto's mouth slowly turned into a grin before taking Ino's hand and standing back up. You got it, he responded with a smile before scratching the back of his head. Do you mind going to Ichiraku's with me? I haven't really had ramen for a while. Fine, Ino said with a small smile. We'll eat there since we're celebrating your return to the village. Let's go, Naruto said with a toothy grin. With that, the two left the monument. Naruto was feeling much better thanks to Ino, while she was glad to have the blonde beginning to be his normal self. She was also glad to spend more time with him. It had been a while since they had last seen each other, and the two were glad to be going out together again. Ibiki walked through the hallways of the Hokage's office building. He was making his way to the Hokage's office since he had some information on sound. Kakashi had captured the two sound ninja brothers, Yukon and Sakan, and he had finally made them crack. It hadn't been easy since Orochimaru had probably taught them how to keep their mouths shut, but he had finally done it. Ibiki knocked on the door of the Hokage's office with a paper on hand. Enter, came the voice of the elderly man. Ibiki entered the door to see Sarutobi going through a rather large amount of paperwork. What brings you here, Ibiki? Lord Hokage, Ibiki said with a light bow before handing the Hokage the paper he had on hand. That is a report on what we got out of the two sound prisoners. They told us some of the locations of Orochimaru's bases, but they are only a few. What else? The third asked while skimming through the report. It appears that the two brothers were part of what Orochimaru called the Sound Four. Yukon and Sakan were given control of one base and many smaller ones, though they have no idea of the locations of any other bases even though they know there's more, Ibiki explained. I've taken the liberty of displaying the bases where Orochimaru most likely is. The third nodded in understanding. This was very important information that would need his immediate attention. He had to send teams to the bases fast since it had been almost a month since Orochimaru's attack and he didn't want the trail to get cold. The bad thing was that many Jonin were out on missions and he couldn't spare many Chunin. He went over ideas on his head and decided to send Jonins with Chunin subordinates to the bases where Orochimaru most likely was, while sending Chunins with Genin squads to the less dangerous bases. Thank you for the information, Ibiki. You may leave, the third said with a nod, dismissing the scarred Jonin. Ibiki gave a light bow before leaving the office, leaving the third to think of who to send. Sarutobi went over teams on his head. As of now, he only had Guy and Kurenai on the village with a limited amount of Chunin since most of them were still reconstructing the village. Guy could go with a Chunin squad with Kurenai doing the same by the next day. That would only leave the Chunin teams. He decided on assigning a few Chunin teams for the task and would summon them to his office for the details. The teams would all leave by the next day, they had no time to lose. Gross Naruto! Ino exclaimed as she watched as Naruto gulped ramen down his throat with gusto. The blonde grinned as he set a bowl down on the stall. That hit the spot, Naruto declared with a satisfied smile. He turned to Ino and flashed her a grin. Don't complain, Ino, you like ramen just as much as I do. Ino huffed and crossed her arms. But I still eat decently, she explained, you just gulp it down and get it all over your mouth and clothes. Naruto sighed knowing that when he argued with Ino, she would always have the last word. Fine, I'll watch how I eat from now on, happy, the blonde said with a frown on his face. Very, Ino said with a smile on her face, clearly happy about making Naruto see his mistakes. Let's get going, we still have time to look around before it gets dark. Naruto nodded and set his money on the stall. Thanks for the food, tell Tucci to get better soon. The blonde said as he turned to leave. Will do, came Iam's voice from inside Ichiraku's. The two blondes left the ramen stand to walk around the village for a little while longer. The sun was already starting to set, which meant they had about an hour until Ino had to go back home. Naruto would usually walk her home before leaving for his apartment since she had once told him that it was what a gentleman should do. What's a messenger bird doing here? Ino asked Naruto. The blonde turned towards the sky to see a bird flying towards them with a letter on its beak. The bird landed on Naruto's shoulder and moved the letter up and down, motioning the blonde to take the letter. The blonde took the letter in hand and the bird flew off before disappearing in the distance. He then opened the letter and began to read its contents. Ino watched Naruto read and got a worried look on her face when she saw him frown. What's wrong? She asked. Don't tell me you already have a new mission? Naruto smiled sadly and put the letter away. I'm afraid so, he muttered with a sigh, there's some of the sound's bases that need to be dealt with. I assume I have to go to one of those bases, but there's not many details here except for the teams and tasks. Ino frowned. It wasn't fair that Naruto just got back and they were already taking him away from her. He hadn't even been on the village for a full day and he was already asked to leave. Fine, she muttered a little sadly, just be careful, Naruto. Don't worry about it, Ino, Naruto said with a smile, but it faltered when he noticed that Ino was still a little down. How about this? We'll make a bet. I will do anything you want if I don't see you for more than 2 days, and you will treat me to ramen if we get to spend a lot more time together in the next few days. Ino thought over the bet and smiled, knowing that she would easily win. Deal, she said with an exited grin, you're going to lose, Naruto. We'll see about that, Naruto said. I have to go to the Hokages now, sorry I won't walk you home. Don't worry about it, Ino responded with a tint of pink on her cheeks, promise me you'll be careful. I promise, Naruto said with a smile before leaping away from the ground and running to the Hokage's office. Ino watched the blonde leave with a smile. She found herself having growing feelings for him and was starting to realize what they really were. If she won the bet, then she would have Naruto take her on a date. She blushed at the idea but hoped that it would come true. With that, the kunoichi made her way home, now having an understanding of her feelings for the whiskered blonde. Naruto entered the Hokage's office to see a few chunin he didn't know along a bored-looking Shikamaru. The blonde stood next to the lazy genius and watched as the Hokage took out a few scrolls. Now that everybody is here, the Hokage began, making Naruto hang his head in shame for being the last one to the office. He only hoped not to end up like Kakashi. I assume you want to know why I chose you for the mission. Most of you have had experience in the many missions you have gone through. I also chose Shikamaru Nara for the mission since his IQ is very high and will be needed for this mission. Naruto Uzumaki was chosen since he already has experience on when it comes to Orochimaru's bases. On this mission you are to search for anything that talks about the cursed seal of heaven, Sarutobi continued with a serious expression on his face. You are to deal with any enemy ninja as you see fit and destroy the base once you have the information you need. You will be heading out with your assigned teams in the morning. A letter has been sent out to them so that they can meet you tomorrow morning at the gate. Understood? Understood, the Chunins responded. The next morning Ino walked to the Konoha gates with a frown on her face. She had gotten the last-minute mission and would be leaving very early. What annoyed her of this was that she wouldn't get to see Naruto off. At least it meant that she had won the bet. She saw the gates coming closer and saw a group of Chunin standing near a group of genin as if getting ready to leave. Ino saw Choji in the group and walked over to him, noticing that every other genin there had looks of confusion on their faces. What's going on here? Ino asked in confusion. There were a bunch of us called here, but they didn't give anyone much information. I saw Shikamaru earlier, but he left before I could talk to him. I guess that's what happens when we get last-minute missions, Choji sighed out as he took out a bag of chips and began to eat. A few minutes passed and most of the Chunin and genin had left the village already. The last groups were preparing to leave and Ino saw another genin she was familiar with. Niji, the ninja that had fought Naruto on the Chunin exams, was standing a little away from everyone with a calm look on his face. Ino frowned when she saw the last of the Chunins and genins leave the gates. What's taking our squad leader so long? She asked in an annoyed tone. Don't know, Choji responded, but it looks like Niji is in our team since he hasn't left yet. Looks like it, Ino muttered with an annoyed look. Not only was her squad leader taking forever, but she now had to spend time with Niji, the guy with the superiority complex. Sorry I'm late, but I had to go over some things with the Hokage, came a familiar voice from behind the genin. And Naruto? Ino gasped out in disbelief. I'll be your squad leader for this mission, Naruto said with a smile on his face, making the genin gape at him. Niji walked over to Naruto and smirked. I can't believe they allowed you to be a Chunin, he said with a smug look. What? Naruto asked in a threatening tone. Niji scoffed before breaking into a smirk. It was just a joke. What? Naruto, Ino and Choji yelled at the same time with shock on their faces. Shut up. Niji snapped with an embarrassed blush on his face. I was only trying to lighten the mood. Naruto eyed Niji carefully before breaking into a grin. Nice to see you've changed a little. We don't have much time to lose, so let's get going. We'll be heading west until I tell you to change direction, the blonde said within a serious tone. The group of ninja leapt away from the village and started to make their way to the base. As they jumped trees, Naruto moved next to Ino and gave her a grin. Looks like I win our bet, he said in a cheerful tone. You better get your wallet ready. Shut up, Ino said with an angry blush on her face. Naruto leapt from 3 to 3 with 3 genin trailing behind him. It had been a few hours since they had left Konoha and the sun was high in the sky. They had been heading west and the blonde was already noticing the climate change. It was growing a little warmer and he assumed that this meant that they were nearing the Fire Country's border. Beyond this border was a small area filled with rivers that would lead to the Sand Village. Since they had come this far, it was time to change directions. He didn't want to pass the border on accident and get his village in trouble. He knew that he could keep on going but looked back at his companions. Niji seemed okay while Ino and Choji were panting lightly with some sweat on their foreheads. The Chunin moved his gaze forward and saw a small clearing on the distance. He signaled his team to stop moving as he landed on a branch. We're going to take a small rest, Naruto informed them with a serious look on his face. Make sure not to eat anything since we'll be moving in less than an hour and I don't want you throwing up on the way. The 3 genin nodded in understanding. The blonde was a little taken back since he expected some complaints but dismissed it. Okay, let's go. The group of ninja went over to the clearing. Ino and Choji had looks of relief on their faces as they made their way to a small stream with fresh water while Naruto and Niji stood next to each other in the middle of the clearing. The Hyuga had his Byakugan active while the blonde crossed his arms and stared ahead with a frown. Neji deactivated his Byakugan and turned to Naruto. There's nobody around, but there are some traces of chakra around, the Hyuga reported with a pensive look. It was normal to have leftover chakra around environments since battles between ninja took place almost anywhere. The leftover chakra would disappear after a few days. What was not normal was the type of chakra he had found. From the looks of things, this chakra is not ordinary, it looks different. How is it not normal? Naruto questioned, already thinking of what to do with his team if they were in any kind of danger. Neji shook his head and put his hands on his pockets, showing he had no need to be on the alert for now. I'm not sure, but it feels as if the chakra is tainted, dark even, he explained. I haven't seen anything like this before, but whatever it was isn't here anymore. Naruto nodded in affirmation. Rest for now, Neji, we'll be moving soon, he ordered as he moved to sit against a tree. The blonde dug into his pocket and took out a paper and a small brush with some ink. Ever since Jiraiya had taught him the art of sealing, the blonde would always carry the necessaries to practice whenever he had free time. He dipped the brush into the ink before getting to work. On the other side of the clearing, Ino drank water from a canteen, feeling the water cool her mouth and wash away the thirst she had been feeling. Choji sat next to her with his head submerged on the water. He was apparently cooling his head while taking gulps of water. Ino was of course disgusted by this and turned her gaze to her other teammate. Neji was standing against a tree with his arms crossed and a thoughtful look on his face. She felt relieved that Neji wasn't being rude to them, though his superiority complex wasn't fully gone. She guessed that Naruto had had a positive impact on him. Ino looked at the other side of the clearing and saw Naruto writing on a small paper. What is he doing? She wondered as she watched the blonde continue to write. A thought struck Ino and her eyes widened. Could it be that he was writing a letter to someone? Did he meet another girl while he was away? The kunoichi shook her head, trying to rid herself of the thought. There was no way that someone else liked Naruto like that, was there? She shyly made her way over to Naruto, hoping to get to the bottom of what the blonde was doing. Hey Naruto, she greeted with a smile. The blonde looked up from his work to Ino with a questioning look on his face. What are you doing? Naruto turned back to his seal and put on his serious face. I'm working on a seal that will help me take some of the weird chakra Neji and I found back to Konoha so that it can be analyzed, the blonde explained as he stroked the paper with his brush. Ino sighed in relief, happy that nobody had beaten her to Naruto yet. She sat next to the blonde and watched as he made the seal. Why do you have to take the chakra anyway? Our mission was to destroy the sound base after getting some research papers, she asked in confusion. Naruto shook his head as he worked on the seal. The mission was to gather evidence of something called the Cursed Seal of Heaven. He gave us a rundown of what the chakra it emits is like, and the leftover chakra around this place is similar to it, he informed Ino as he sighed happily and put the brush and ink away. We still have some time to rest, so I'll just get it before we go. Ino nodded but almost yelped when she felt her chin touch Naruto's shoulder. Just how close was she to the blonde? She turned to the blonde and blushed when she noticed that her face was only inches away from his own. They had probably been too into the conversation to notice their proximity. Naruto noticed that Ino got quiet and turned to see what was wrong with her. That had been a mistake, since when he turned to his right, his lips brushed against Ino's. The two ninja blushed a crimson red before jumping away from each other. The blonde cursed himself for his stupidity but still felt the warmth from Ino's lips on his own. Her lips were soft and he felt breathless when their lips met, but he knew that it was an accident and it wouldn't happen again. Ino kept her gaze away from Naruto and cursed herself for not moving away from the blonde before it was too late. Part of her had wanted an accident of that kind to happen, but when it actually took place she panicked. His lips on her own had felt like nothing she had ever expected from a kiss. Her heart had raced faster than ever before and a large part of her wanted the light kiss to last forever. I think I'll go get the chakra now, Naruto said with a nervous look on his face. He felt as though he had put their friendship in jeopardy by that slip-up. Ino watched him go with a light frown. From the way Naruto acted, he was feeling guilty about what had happened. She was still a little shaken about the light kiss, but she was still able to read him like a book. It hadn't been Naruto's fault and he was stupid for thinking it was. This proved how his treatment as a kid had affected him. He would blame himself for anything that happened. She had noticed this some time ago and knew that she would need to talk to him the next chance she got. After all, with what she wanted to happen, kissing would be quite normal and she couldn't have Naruto thinking that the kiss had been a bad thing. Maybe by the time this mission is over, we'll be a couple. Ino giggled at the thought and smiled dreamily. Choji watched Ino from the distance and sighed. Girls, he muttered with a chuckle before going back to drinking water, knowing that a break wouldn't come for some time. Orochimaru and Kabuto walked through a mountainous area. The snake summoner had an amused expression on his face while Karuto's remained calm and collected. They were on their way to one of his hidden bases. Since one of the Sound Four had been captured, he had to find a replacement. It would be risky, but he had the perfect candidate, after having Kabuto take care of those risks, of course. Kabuto, Orochimaru muttered suddenly. Kabuto turned his gaze to the snake summoner. I want you to take care of those things when we get to the base. Very well, Kabuto said with a slight bow. What will we do about Yukon and Sakan? Having them in the leaf is a little too dangerous. Orochimaru chuckled. I'm no fool, Kabuto. I have taken the necessary measures if any of my ninja are captured, he explained with an amused smile. Not one of my ninja knows enough to be a danger to me or my plans. What about me, Lord Orochimaru? The medic asked with a smug look. You're an exception since I've told you about everything, the snake summoner informed with a smirk on his face, but remember that not everything is as it seems. The snake summoner continued on his way with a frowning Kabuto trailing behind him. It was dark when Naruto and his team arrived close to their destination. The blonde stood on a tree branch with his team standing behind of him waiting for instructions. A small mountain could be seen in the distance with trees all around it. It seemed like a normal place, but on closer inspection it had many chakra signatures scattered around it. Somewhere near the mountain, while, thanks to Niji's Byakugan, they had found out that there were even more inside of the mountain. This meant that the information Naruto had received was accurate. This mountain did in fact house one of the Sound's bases. The blonde turned an eye to his team and saw the state they were in. Choji and Ino looked exhausted while Niji looked a little better than them but not good enough to put up much of a fight. Naruto knew he was not much better since it had been a long trip and knew that they would need to rest for the night. The trees in the area covered them from view and no chakra signature was too close. He guessed that they would be able to rest in this place since it looked relatively safe. We'll set camp here, Naruto instructed as he dropped from the tree and landed on the ground with no trouble. The other followed his lead and landed on the ground behind him. You can eat if you want, but if you need to make a fire then tell me. We will keep watches of 3 hours after we go to sleep. I'll keep the first watch, Niji the second, Choji the third and Ino the fourth. Very well, Niji sighed out as he sat on the ground with a tired look on his face. It's finally eating time, Choji declared cheerfully as he took out a bag of chips and several rice balls from the backpack he had brought for the mission. Ino sighed happily as sat against a tree and reached into her backpack. She took out a plastic container with stew her mom had made her the night before. It was a little weird to have stew as dinner, but her mom told her that it was so she would have something made with love on her mission. She smiled at the memory and opened the container but frowned when she noticed it was cold. A fire would be needed to heat the soup and she knew that in order to do so she would need to speak with Naruto, which would be really awkward. Naruto sighed as he watched his team. Tomorrow would be a dangerous day and he hoped not to have anyone get hurt but knew that the chances of that would be slim. They were going into an enemy base after all. He dismissed those thoughts and took out a scroll from one of the pockets on his Chunin vest. The scroll opened to reveal various cups of instant ramen. He licked his lips in anticipation and knew that he would need to make a small fire that wouldn't give out their location, meaning that the fire would have to be made away from camp. He prepared to leave but froze when he saw Ino walking over to him with a blush on her face. Naruto, Ino said in an attempt to get his attention. The blonde threw her a questioning look and his eyes widened when he noticed what she had on her hand. I need a fire to heat my food. The blonde inwardly groaned at his luck, or lack thereof, and threw Ino a nervous smile. "Don't worry, Ino, I kinda have to heat my ramen," he confessed before getting a little serious. "We have to make the fire away from camp." "Okay," Ino agreed with a light blush adorning her cheeks. It was still a little awkward around Naruto, but she still had to talk to him. Having him think that she hadn't felt anything about the small kiss would make him think that she wanted nothing to do with him. Naruto nodded and turned to Choji and Neji. "Ino and I are going to make a fire away from camp. If you have anything you need to heat up, then come with us," the blonde instructed. "The food I brought doesn't need to be heated since I thought ahead of time, unlike some people," Neji said with a smirk on his face. Naruto growled at that before turning to Choji. He didn't really need an answer from him since the genin was stuffing his face with his food. The blonde turned to Ino and motioned for her to follow him before jumping up a tree and moving away from the camp with Ino in tow. The blonde kept his eyes open as he leapt from tree to tree. He would need a place that wouldn't make the fire too visible, also taking into account the distance away from camp. He saw a cave in the distance and thought of making the fire there, but decided against it since if there was any kind of dangerous animal, then they would make unnecessary noise that would alert the enemy of their location. The blonde saw a clearing in the distance and decided on using it for the fire since it was far away from camp and he would be able to keep the smoke from giving their location by using wind manipulation. The blonde turned to face Ino and pointed at the clearing with a nod. Ino nodded back and watched as Naruto jumped down from a tree and landed on the clearing. The kunoichi followed after him and looked around the area. It had plain ground and not many grass. She assumed that this place would do. "I'll get some firewood to burn," Naruto informed Ino as he walked towards the forest. "I'll be back soon." Ino smiled as she watched Naruto leave. Things were starting to go back to normal between them, even though there was still an air of awkwardness around them. She sat on the ground and waited for the blonde to return. She only hoped that he would be back soon since she felt a little uneasy being alone near an enemy base. Shikamaru groaned as he watched his team. His team had consisted of Kiba, Lee, and Shino. The Chunin didn't really mind Shino since he would be quiet most of the time, but for some reason Kiba and Lee wouldn't shut up. They were currently sitting around a fire somewhere south of Konoha. One of the Sound's bases was located only a few miles away, and they would be raiding the place the following morning. "What motivation!" Lee exclaimed in happiness. "If you and Akamaru work so well, then I'll find a dog myself and train it until we are better than you. If I don't, then I'll run 100 laps around Konoha on my hands." Shikamaru frowned from his spot across Kiba and Lee. The two genin had been talking about their fighting skills and how they would rise through the ranks of the village. "What did I do to deserve this?" the lazy genius thought with a grimace. "They're quite loud," Shino pointed out from his spot next to Shikamaru. The Chunin had a look of annoyance on his face, showing that he wasn't entirely happy with his team. "You'll get used to it. Whenever my team went out for missions, Kiba would always be really loud, saying that he was talking for the team since none of us were really outspoken." Shikamaru sighed. "I wouldn't have minded being on your team instead of Kiba. It would have been peaceful to have a team with calm people," he admitted with a frown on his face, remembering his own team. "I had to put up with Ino of all people. She would never give our ears a rest, and to make things worse she brought Naruto with her after a while. They're good people and friends to have, but the two of them are way too troublesome." "I can imagine," Shino agreed, knowing that he too wouldn't enjoy having such a loud team. Shikamaru suddenly laid on the ground and yawned. "I'm going to sleep for now. We'll need all our strength tomorrow," he explained. "Make sure to wake me when your watch is over." Shino nodded before hearing snoring. He snapped his head towards Shikamaru and sweat dropped. Only the lazy Chunin would be able to sleep that quickly. There was an awkward silence as a bonfire heated Naruto and Ino's food. The two blondes were still a little shaken about the kiss, though Ino still tried to make conversation from time to time. Those conversations would only end in awkward silences, something the two hated. Their friendship wasn't supposed to be awkward. The two were usually always talking each other's ears off and would know what each other was thinking. Finally, Naruto muttered as he took his final cup of ramen away from the bonfire and opened it to reveal the godly contents. His mouth watered when the smell of ramen hit his nostrils before he took out a pair of chopsticks he had sealed with the ramen and began to eat. Ino watched him with a small smile before taking her stew away from the fire. She blew on it before grabbing a pair of chopsticks her mother had put on the container. A smile made its way to her face as she ate her food. Her mom had been right, having a home-cooked meal was better than having anything else any day. Nothing could ever beat what a mother had cooked for her children. Her thoughts caught up with her and she frowned. Sadness washed through her when she gazed at the blonde. He had been an orphan and had nobody to make him a home-cooked meal. A smile made its way to her face as an idea struck her. Naruto ate his ramen in silence. Nothing could really beat Ichiraka's ramen, but it would do for now. It was still good ramen after all. As the blonde opened his mouth to put his chopsticks to his lips, another pair of chopsticks suddenly entered his mouth. He turned to Ino with the chopsticks still in his mouth. She only smiled at him as she took the chopsticks away. The blonde started to chew whatever Ino had given him and smiled in contempt when he tasted it. "How is it?" Ino asked with a smile. Naruto finished swallowing his food and smiled. "It was great. What was it?" he asked with a grin. "It was some leftover stew my mom made yesterday," she informed with a gentle smile on her face. "I just thought that you would want something made rather than bought." "Thanks, Ino," Naruto said with a look of appreciation on his face. Ino smiled back and knew that it was the perfect time to talk to Naruto. She knew that an opportunity like this wouldn't come again on this mission. "I have to tell you something, Naruto," Ino said with a light blush on her face, her eyes bearing into Naruto's. The blonde in turn nodded with his gaze never leaving Ino's. "It's about the thing that happened earlier." Naruto blushed remembering the incident and looked away from Ino. "I'm sorry I did that," he apologized with sadness reflected on his blue eyes. "It was an accident and I know that it was kind of my FAU-. "No!" Ino interjected a little louder than she wanted. She composed herself and looked at Naruto with a sad smile. "I don't want you to think it was your fault. It was both of our faults and besides, it's not like I didn't want it to happen." What?" Naruto gasped out in disbelief. Ino blushed but didn't look away from the blonde, trying to show him that she was serious. "To tell you the truth, I've liked you as more than a friend for some time but only realized it recently." Naruto blushed and looked into Ino's eyes. He had no idea what to say but knew that he should say something in order for Ino not to get the wrong idea. "I think I feel the same," he finally admitted after a moment of silence. "When I left with Jiraiya-sensei I kept on going over what I really felt about you until I finally realized it one day." Ino smiled with happy tears welling up on her eyes. Naruto felt the same way she did. She had feared that he would reject her, but that fear had been proven wrong. "And Naruto," she muttered before throwing her arms around him and resting her head on his chest. Naruto smiled and held Ino closer to him. It felt right to hold her so close on his arms. She felt soft against his touch and her hair smelt of wildflowers, making him crazy. He really didn't know what was going to happen from then on, but at the moment didn't really care. He just focused on returning Ino's embrace and melting into her warmth. "Hey Naruto," Ino muttered as she moved her head away from the blonde's chest in order to look at him. Before the blonde could respond, Ino's lips crashed into his. The blonde was taken back at first, but then closed his eyes and returned the kiss. It was an innocent, curious kiss full of love and warmth. Ino felt as if she melted against Naruto's warm embrace and the feeling of his lips made her heart go wild. The blonde had similar thoughts and found that the feeling of her lips on his made him feel as if nothing really mattered except returning the gesture, making his body feel a warmth he had never felt before. The two finally broke away from the kiss and stared into each other's eyes. "Does this mean you're my boyfriend now?" Ino asked with a small smile on her face. Naruto grinned and put on a thoughtful look. "I don't know, Ino," he began. "If we become a couple then it means that I'll have to bother you every day from now on." Ino smiled and embraced the blonde with a content sigh. I think I'll manage to tolerate you, but you'll have to eat at my house more often so that you can get to know my parents a little more, she explained. She giggled when she felt Naruto stiffen at the word parents. She knew of how intimidating her dad was when it came to boys. Don't worry, Naruto, my parents like you. As long as your dad doesn't kill me, I'll be okay, Naruto said with a smile on his face. He pulled away from the hug and stood up before offering his hand to Ino. We have to get back now. We've been gone too long and the others might start to worry. Ino nodded as she took Naruto's hand and stood up. We don't want them to search around here with no idea where they're going, she agreed, but she'll be taking me on a date when we get back to the village. Naruto chuckled. Fine, but you're still going to buy me my ramen, he said with a mischievous grin on his face. Ino crossed her arms and pouted, making the blonde chuckle. There's one more thing, Ino, the blonde continued with a serious look on his face. Ino gave him a questioning look before the blonde pointed at the mountain that stood in the distance. We're still in the middle of a mission. Make sure not to tell anyone about us just yet, since it would only distract the team. Wait until the mission is over to tell them. I don't want an enemy ninja overhearing us. You're right, Ino said with a nod before breaking into a grin. That just means that we'll just have to finish the mission a lot faster then. Right, Naruto agreed as he took Ino's hand on his and began to go back to camp. The two felt happy about their new relationship and couldn't wait until the mission was over so that they could spend more time together. The next morning saw Naruto and his team getting ready to enter the sound base. They stood hidden among the trees and saw a group of ninja guarding the mountain. After waking up, the group had made their way to the mountain and had come to a spot after Neji had seen a group of ninja close by. The ninja didn't wear headbands, hiding their village's identity, and were presumably genin level. You guys wait here, Naruto whispered to his team. There's only 3 of them. I'll take care of them before they can alert anyone. Make sure to take out any other ninja that comes this way. The group nodded in understanding as the blonde took out his blade. The 3 enemy ninja were watching over the mountain, planning on killing anyone that got a little too close. They were anxious to kill someone as a kind of goodbye gift since their leader had informed them that they would be abandoning the base soon. They really didn't care since it only meant that they would get to torture more people wherever they were moved to. The sound of rustling leaves was heard and the 3 turned towards the source of the sound, but finding nothing. What's go dash, one of the ninja began but didn't finish as a blade ran through his throat. The 2 ninja watched their ally go down before they launched at the culprit. One of them threw a punch, but the blonde met it with his blade, slicing through the man's fist and making him cry in pain. The other ninja threw a kick that was easily parried by Naruto's left shoulder before spinning towards the man and delivering a strong backhand with his left hand. The 2 ninja recovered from the attack and prepared for the attack but were thrown off when the blonde jumped in the air before disappearing. The 2 sound ninja looked around for any sign of the blonde but found none. He had simply vanished into thin air. The 2 were suddenly hit by a strong wind coming from the trees. The wind was so strong that the 2 ninja lost their footing and were blown away. The 2 ninjas sailed through the air, unaware of the 2 shadow clones behind them. They could do nothing as the 2 clones used their blades to cut through them as if they were nothing. The 2 bodies fell limply on the ground, dead from having their hearts and lungs pierced with such force. Naruto nodded at the clones and watched as they dispelled. There was a pool of blood on the floor and he frowned. Someone would notice this easily, meaning that they had little time to infiltrate the base. The blonde jumped back to the trees and approached his team. We have to move now, the blonde ordered with a frown. They'll notice the disappearance of those 3, so we have to get moving. Got it, the 3 genin said with serious expressions. Let's go, Naruto said as he ran at the mountain. When they got close enough, they noticed that it had a series of caves. Neji. On it, Neji responded as he activated his Byakugan. He looked around for a few moments before deactivating it. There don't appear to be any ninja around those caves. The chakra signatures are coming from deeper inside. Naruto nodded in understanding. Good, he muttered with a serious look on his face. I'm sure that the caves are filled with traps, so I'll get a group of shadow clones to lead the way. We'll be going the same way, since we'll need the clones to take care of the traps. What will we do when we get to the enemy ninja? Choji asked. You kill them, Naruto responded in a calm tone, they'll be too much trouble if left alive. Wait, what? Choji asked in shock. Neji frowned at the genin. You're a ninja, so you're expected to kill. Naruto's right, these ninja are enemies of the leaf and are too dangerous to be left alive. Let's get going, Naruto said as he made a couple of shadow clones and had them lead the group of ninja into one of the caves. Let's get this over with, the blonde thought with a frown as the group of ninja walked through the cave. Shikamaru put on a look of concentration as he analyzed the situation. His team was standing behind him, completely silent and waiting for instructions. Sound ninjas stood in front of what Shikamaru assumed to be the base they had to destroy. Staying hidden and setting explosives throughout the base would be the best way to accomplish the mission, but the ninja guarding the base would be a problem. Those two ninja would need to be killed, there was no other way. He had killed before and found it to be troublesome but necessary when it came down to it. He could only guess when it came to his team's experiences but hoped that they wouldn't be too bothered by killing. The lazy Chunin faced his team with a serious expression. This is the plan, he began. Lee, I want you to take care of the two ninja in the entryway. Those two have to be killed, we can't afford to knock them out and risking them waking up later on. Lee nodded with a grim look on his face. I know that it is most unyouthful to do this, but I must do it for the mission, he declared with a thumbs up. Do not worry, Shikamaru, I'll get this done. Shikamaru nodded. After that we'll go inside the base as quietly as possible. If any ninja spots you, then you kill them on the spot or will be slowed down and forced to face a mob of ninja, he instructed with a frown. His team nodded at him with mixed emotions. He could tell that Kiba hadn't killed before while Shino looked indifferent. He assumed that the bug user had killed before. The lazy Chunin looked at the enemy ninja and frowned. Being a Chunin was too troublesome, but he still had a job to do. With a sigh, Shikamaru faced Lee and gave him a nod. Go.